therefore that reduces the background noise. So welcome to Walking Together. This is our first of 3 gatherings when we're going to take time to focus on intergenerational ministry. During our gatherings, we'll spend some time reflecting how we might best nurture a culture that's truly inclusive. What does that mean when we get into our local churches? What does an intergenerational congregation and ministry mean? We recognise that as a church, we have loads of policies about what it means to be inclusive. But what does it mean when those policies are put into practice? These sessions have been created and facilitated by a team of people, none of whom pretend to know everything about intergenerational ministry. But together, we, like you, have a variety of experience, and most importantly, we're passionate about it. And during our time together, there'll be opportunities for you to share your experience as well in various breakout rooms. So let me introduce the team to you. Well, I'm actually going to ask them to introduce themselves to you with 1 or 2 short sentences. So first I invite Gail. Gail, would you like to introduce yourself?
Evening, folks. I work with the children, youth and family team, and my area of specialism is around family and intergenerational ministry. And
Tiz.
Hi, I'm Tiz. I work for the Southampton Methodist District and as the Intergenerational Mission Enabler. But Nikki from my church is on the call. So if you want to find out what I'm really like, you could always ask her.
And Abby.
Hi everyone, I'm Abby. I'm part of the Evangelism and Growth team, and my role is all about discipleship. So really passionate about how people can learn and grow together across different generations.
Thanks, Abby. And I'm Carla Cornett. I'm part of the Learning Network based in the Yorkshire Plus region, and our team works around learning and development. Sorry.
I've just noticed that Marion has her hand up. I don't know whether you meant to do that, Marion. You're muted at the moment.
Do you want to speak?
Right. No.
Yeah, we can hear you now. So did you want to ask something specific?
No, I didn't. I it's by accident and I can't.
Oh, that's
get rid
right.
of it now.
No worries. I just wanted to check. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. So I guess that we each recognise the importance of relationships as we engage with, as we seek to nurture intergenerational ministry. In fact, I would say relationships are key to church life per se. But how do we deepen intergenerational relationships so that we might have a deeper, richer, more vibrant and life-giving experience of church? So let's pause for a moment and think about, what do we actually mean by intergenerational ministry? I'm going to invite Tiz to offer a definition for us. Tiz, how would you define intergenerational ministry?
Well, some of you know I've been working for the district for about 5 years, so I should have an answer, and I'm going to cheat. I'm going to give an answer from this book here called Intergenerate, Transforming Churches Through Intergenerational Ministry. And I really like their definition. So intergenerational ministry intentionally facilitates and creates contexts where people of different ages and generations constructively interact and equip each other for ministry in a manner that fosters spiritual formation. So for me, there's something about being intentional, about creating spaces, about interaction, which builds, as you were saying, about the relationship side, but also knowing why we're doing it. There is something about the spiritual formation of people that I would say is part of that.
Thanks, Tiz, a really helpful definition. I wonder if we can dig a little bit deeper though, Tiz. You work within the area of intergenerational ministry. I wonder, can you share with us one time, one story when you've seen intergenerational ministry working well?
Well, I've got loads actually, but one particular example was a few years ago in my local church. I had the privilege of leading a team. We went to Uganda on a mission trip, and we had a range of ages, and I particularly enjoyed the relationship that built during that 2-week trip of a 14-year-old girl and a lady of, she's not on the call, she's not Nikki, so I can say her age. She was 69, and just the way that those two really gelled together, and they did really great in the 2 weeks, and they really supported each other and helped each other. But equally, when we got back, what was really interesting was they became good friends. So they introduced their new friend to their existing friends. So the 14-year-old was able to introduce this lady to her peers, and vice versa. The lady was able to introduce the 14-year-old girl to her peers. So it was a really interesting interaction and relationship that formed, and they stayed working.
And it sounds like there's longevity in that relationship because it went on beyond that trip.
Yeah, so obviously having the task kind of created the experience, that interaction. They could really help each other, but then later, like you say, they formed a really good friendship, and that and both of them are obviously older now than they were then, and that friendship has continued onwards. So that's really good.
Really good to hear, Tis. Thanks for sharing that story. And as we go through the course, there's probably more stories that will emerge as well. You'll not be surprised to hear me say that intergenerational work and interactions is not peculiar to the church. So in the chat function, I'm inviting you to jot down. I wonder where beyond the life of the church you've noticed intergenerational relationships and experiences. Where beyond the life of the church have you noticed intergenerational relationships and experiences? We'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Family events in schools and the local library, work.
Yeah. Family events.
Yeah. In a choir. Yeah.
I like the Silver Surfers. That's a really good example, helping people of different ages get online.
Social events, shopping.
And working in a mother and toddler group.
Mm-hmm.
Social events.
Music, sports, on the bus, at work. Volunteering, holidays. And I guess if we gave ourselves even longer, we could come up with more and more responses. We recognise that intergenerational ministry and relationships happen all over the place, but how might we use them best and develop them within the life of the church? Tis, over to you to introduce our next activity.
So what we're going to do now is building on that understanding that intergenerational community happens in all sorts of places, as we've identified in the chat, and you may have other ones. We're going to put you now into breakout rooms just to explore how some of the faith formation stuff, as it were, has happened for you. So can we put the next slide up, Gail? So we've got a question for you that we'd like you to look at in your breakout rooms. So so thinking about a person, a relationship that's really inspired you with someone from a different generation, and what did you learn? So going back to my example earlier, I know that both those parties really were inspired by the other one and learned a lot. So can you think of stories from your own lives that have helped you and inspired you when you've mixed with people from a different generation? So we're going to give you a few minutes in this group. So watch the clock in the corner. I can't remember how many minutes, and I now realise I haven't got my notes right in front of me. So that's a bit bad.
We've got 8 minutes in this group.
Okay, 8 minutes. We went for really random numbers. So we've done all that. So yeah, we're going to give you 8 minutes to think about a person, a relationship that's really inspired you with someone from a different generation. And what did you learn from that? So cool. Thank you.
The room. Just wait for everybody to arrive. If you've taken yourself off mute, if you wouldn't mind bobbing yourself back on, because it reduces the background sounds. Thank you. Welcome back. So we're not going to take any verbal feedback from that activity, but if there's anything you would like to add into the chat, a comment or a phrase, and remember that it has to be your story if there's a story to share. We can't share other people's stories. Gail, we're going to hand over to you.
Thanks, Carla. I really hope that you've had some fruitful conversations, that you've started to build some connections with people, and that's been helpful for you. You're going to have a chance to have some more conversation in a few minutes' time. But I want to focus specifically on what growing relationships across the generations means for us, really. And you might have heard of the American broadcaster Fred Rogers, who's perhaps better known as Mr. Rogers, who wrote and presented Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, a successful TV show that has a very lasting legacy. Fred Rogers was a champion of children, and especially the difference it makes to be a community together of all generations. And Fred Rogers said this: we just don't get to be competent human beings without a lot of different investments from others. From the time you were very little, you've had people who have smiled you into smiling, people who have talked you into talking, sung you into singing, and loved you into loving. Fred recognised that adults play a crucial part in the upbringing of children, and that we can have a significant impact if we choose to be part of their lives. And of course, the same is true for us as adults, that children and young people being part of our lives shapes who we are, how we view the world, and how help us to grow and thrive as well. Applying Fred Rogers' words to the context of faith enables us to see how being a community of all ages can make a really big difference, because it's been well documented that faith grows best in all age communities. As children and young people grow up, as they are actively part of their churches, faith is given the opportunity to grow roots into their lives that last a lifetime. Being part of an intergenerational community is something children and young people treasure. I'm sure many of us could look back on our younger days. You may just have been talking about some of these things in your conversations, and recall someone who shaped how our faith developed in those formative years. Someone we were aware of who had faith, who we enjoyed conversations with, had the chance to ask them questions, share our own thoughts about what we believed or what we didn't believe, and was spurred on and encouraged to keep growing in faith. For me, there was a particular lady, Ruth, who was a young mum raising 3 children in a busy household at the time, but who always made time for me when I popped into their family home as a teenager. In the midst of all that she had going on, we talked faith. We wrestled with the big questions of life, and we didn't always reach clear answers, but the process was enormously helpful. It reassured me that it was okay to explore my faith and discover for myself what I thought and believed, and that's a habit that continues to this day. The beauty of being a church of all generations is that we bring our own experiences, our shared wonder and understanding that builds up others in the body. And it reminds us perhaps of the words that Paul says when he writes to the Ephesians about helping the whole body to be healthy, growing and full of love. Faith can often be a private or individual affair, but when we're able to find the language to talk about it, to articulate the joys and the challenges, it helps us all to know that we are not alone. There is no magic secret formula to being a follower of Jesus. We do it alongside each other, day by day, a step at a time, in the knowledge of God's unending love for us. So if we're going to be an all-age community where faith flourishes, where do we start? And I want to suggest that relationships is the best place to start. It's really very simple, surely, in that case, or is it? Because for the past few decades, the generations have been growing apart. So perhaps we need to go back to the key of what holds us together as God's church, being the body of believers. We need to get to know one another again. We need to start at the beginning and nurture relationships for everyone's benefit. Now, in some research that was shared by the Search Institute in the US, they describe the importance of what they call simple interactions. These are the active ingredients that nurture faith and prompt it to grow. And there are 4 dimensions to this. The first one is connection, which is when children, young people and adults are mutually present and in tune with each other. The second is reciprocity or mutuality, a two-way communication that's a bit like a serve and return, using the metaphor of tennis. It's not controlled by the adult, but offers a more balanced way to interact with each other. The third dimension is inclusion, where an adult is intentional about offering an invitation and sense of belonging to each child or young person, regardless of their ability, their temperaments, or other factors. And finally, the fourth opportunity, the fourth dimension is really fascinating, I think, because it's about the opportunity to grow, interactions which help children and young people see what they can accomplish through support and challenge. That's very much been part of my own Methodist upbringing, where my church supported me from quite a young age to start to recognise perhaps some of my calling and my gifts and my skills. So from a faith perspective, those 4 dimensions help everyone to have a sense of belonging, to feel that they have a place in community, a place where they have a role and a part to play, where children and young people have equal status with adults, a place where everyone contributes meaningfully, building friendships with others and growing in faith as well. So something perhaps for you to go away and reflect on after this evening, which is which of those 4 dimensions might be a good one for you and your church to invest in. Do you want to increase those connections, build some mutuality or reciprocity? Do you want to be more intentional about inclusion or support opportunities to grow and develop? By choosing one of those to focus on, it might be the path to flourishing where everyone benefits. So, bearing in mind what I've just said to you, we want to introduce you. Some of you will know about using Slido, and we want to give you a chance to feed back and share some of your thoughts on this. So I'm just going to share my screen again. And if you've got a smartphone or another device handy, you can go to slido.com. And if you type in the code, which is 2539651, you will find that we've got a little poll there that you can take part in. And we want to collect and gather the thoughts of the whole group via Slido. So we just want you to put in there a word or a phrase that perhaps has just struck you since you've been part of this session this evening, and type it into Slido, and it will gradually create for us an illustration and a collection of all of our words and phrases. So you just need to go to slido.com, pop that into your browser, and then by entering the code, it takes you to the poll for this evening. Now you can carry on doing this. We're going to invite you to go back into breakout rooms for some further conversation. And the question we're asking you here is about the opportunities where you are. So thinking about some of the things that I just said, where do you see opportunities for faith to grow across the generations that are going to help these relationships to flourish? And we particularly want to encourage you to think beyond a Sunday service. Now, that might be quite challenging because that's a key point of contact, but I wonder if there are other opportunities and occasions where you might think, actually, here's a time where we might be able to build our relationships with one another. So I'm wondering, are we ready to go back into breakouts?
Yes, I'm going to invite you now.
So welcome back. I always get caught out by Mrs. Zoom telling me that recording's in progress. It always slightly freaks me out. Yeah, so welcome back. Hope you've had a good conversation in that last group. I apologise about we're going to call it a Slido glitch. No fault liability thing here. So if you want to still put your answer in on Slido, sorry, it wasn't quite in the right format, you can do that now. And in a minute, we'll share that slide. Yeah, so do you want to share that now? Is that possible, Gail? Can we do that?
Sure, here it comes.
Or drum roll. It sounds like it looks like a drum roll moment, doesn't it? Really, everybody can. So thank you very much for putting in some answers in there. So obviously the ones in the bigger type are the ones that have had the most response. So collaboration, relationships, sacrificial, connection, mindset, and generosity. And then there's some of the other ones that I just saw difficult there. That's an interesting answer. Hopefully these few sessions we're going to do might help you work out the how to make it less difficult. So we'll send this out to you as part of the feedback and the ongoing work.
Some really honest answers there as well, I think, Tis.
Yeah. It is very yeah, I picked up on the word difficult, but there's also hard work in there.
But worth it as well.
Yeah.
Is that as well.
And it often it's interesting. I've read a lot, and you know, we've got so used to a format of church in the last 100 and so odd years with Sunday school and all that kind of stuff. So actually to bring the church back together is actually quite an interesting process to go back and review that. But I would definitely echo the worth it part of that.
So thank you for participating in that Slido, and hopefully that's been a helpful reminder to you, some words that maybe not have been in your mind, but in the minds of others. We're drawing to a close. Hopefully you received an email with some reading that you were invited to do. If there's anything that struck you from that reading, don't hesitate to bob it into chat. Our final question to you would be, so this is the first of 3 gatherings. Who might you bring along with you to the next gatherings? We have one scheduled on the 10th of November and one on the 8th of December. On the 10th of November, we'll be thinking about the why of intergenerational ministry and reflect on some of the theological principles that underpin it. And then on the 8th of December, we'll be thinking about the next steps in our intergenerational journey. We recognise that people will be different stages along that journey, but what will be your next step? So just as we draw to a close, just a moment of quiet, and maybe in chat, you might be brave enough to put the name or the initial of somebody who you're going to invite to join us on our next gathering on the 10th of November. That's a good question, Ali. Can we share the Zoom link, or does everyone have to book on? It's probably best if people book on, if possible, please, because then they'll receive the emails that they need. The recordings will be available, and that's one of the beauties of registering, is that we can send out those links to you. Well, we're grateful that you gave this time to this evening. We hope that you found it of benefit. We honour our time and say that we finish at 8:30, and that's what we want to do. So thank you ever so much for spending this 45 minutes with us, and we will continue to pray for you as you engage in intergenerational ministry. So thank you, good night, and God bless.